What is going on, everyone? Mets Talk with Hayden J here. Let's make sure the audio's doing fine. What is going on, everyone? Mets Talk. All right, audio sounds pretty fine to me. Hopefully it sounds well for you guys in the chat. But what is going on, everyone? Mets Talk with Hayden is the name. Hope we are all doing extremely well today. I am most certainly doing well today. We are officially here in the second half. It has been quite a journey this first half for this New York Mets team. We are officially in the second half of the 2022 New York Mets season, as well as the Major League Baseball season. So I am super excited to dive into the second half with all of you guys and all the crazy, the good, and the bad adventures that face this New York Mets team ahead. But before we get started, everyone, please, if you could do a couple things for me, that would be very much appreciated. Smash that like button, most importantly. Let's get out to some more New York Mets fans and baseball fans. If you have any comments, questions, concerns, do not hesitate. Drop them in the comment section below. It could be about the Mets, the A's, the Reds, the Blue Jays, anything baseball related. Turn on those post notifications so you never miss a video or stream. And that is really all I got in terms of that. I did actually upload a video yesterday in regards to the New York Mets 2022 first half of the season. And it's at like 500 or 600 or something views. So keep it up, guys. I really do appreciate that. If you have not watched it, definitely. I uploaded it not even 24 hours ago. So definitely check that out. Let's get that to 1,000 views. That'd be ideal. I know we can definitely do it. So in today's stream, we are going to be going over the New York Mets and the San Diego Padres series preview. The Padres are coming into town to play a 3-game set in Queens, so we are going to be discussing that, as well as some Mets news, your guys' comments, questions, and, of course, anything else that comes across our way. So let's stop wasting any more time. As we know, the All-Star game is in the books, the Home Run Derby is in the books, all of that, week off stuff is in the books. So let's get into it. So game one, which will be tonight, at 7:10, the San Diego Padres are coming into town. They currently have a record of 52-42 and a record of 27-21 while on the road, where the Mets are entering the second half 58-35 with a home record of 28-15. So getting into it, tonight's game will be at Citi Field starting at 7:10 as first pitch. We will have Mad Max Scherzer on the bump for the New York Mets. Obviously, Scherzer is 6-1 on the season, 2.22 ERA, a 0.88 whip, 69 innings pitched, very nice. 90 strikeouts. So overall, with Max Scherzer, he is hopefully going to have a dominant second half. We know that he didn't play a whole lot on this first half due to injury, and he was sidelined for a fair amount of the first half. So hopefully he can get back into his groove, and he most likely is. He's been looking elite. His fastball, his slider, his changeup. The dude has a large arsenal of pitches, I will say. Overall, with Scherzer, the only thing that I will say has been a little interesting is the barrel percentage. He's been getting barrel a little bit, but otherwise for that, I mean, he's been doing a pretty good job. Really no major complaints for Scherzer. And then obviously for the San Diego Padres, they will have Yu Darvish. Yu Darvish coming in to the second half, 8-4 on the season. 3.41 ERA, a 0.99 whip, 108.1 innings pitched with 100 strikeouts flat out like that. So Darvish is having a pretty nice season with the San Diego Padres. Did not have a good season last year, but has definitely been having a great one this year. He did face the Mets earlier this season, and boy, that did not go super well. The last time Darvish faced the New York Mets, he went 7 innings with 10 strikeouts and only 2 hits. So that was a really, really rough time facing Yu Darvish. So if you're the New York Mets case, you could really hope that you can try and jump on Yu Darvish really as soon as possible. Obviously, Yu Darvish has some nice pitches. He has a nice cutter. That slider definitely is nice, and the Mets could definitely take advantage of a slider if it's not on point early on in the game. So we'll see. So that will be game one tonight at 7:10. Getting into game two, which will be tomorrow's game, we will have Chris Bassitt on the bump for the Mets, who is 7-6 on the season, 3.79 ERA, a 1.14 whip, 102 innings pitched, 104 strikeouts. Chris Bassett is having a pretty good season, to say for the least. I don't really care about his ERA, and honestly, his ERA is average, so I'm really not going to make a big deal about it. But Bassett really having a nice season. I mean, has a huge arsenal of pitches. I mean, this dude, I think, has like 6-7 pitches. So really phenomenal to see out of there. Like I said, only major concern is the long ball. 14 home runs given up in the first half. Hopefully he can try and contain that. Or, like I said, if you're going to give up home runs and, you're going to give up a lot of barrels. Like I said, the audio sounds fine. Just making sure. Yeah, I mean, like I said, the only thing is, if you're going to give up a lot of home runs and a lot of barrels, just make sure no one's on base. I mean, it's as simple as that. So, I mean, if you could try and work something out like that, then I think Bassett could have a really good start. For the San Diego Padres, they will be having Blake Snell. And Snell definitely is not having a good season. He's really been struggling. It's likewise for last year. Snell is currently 1-5 on the season with a 5.22 ERA, a 1.48 WHIP, 50 innings pitched, 66 strikeouts. The walk ratio has been through the roofs with Blake Snell, 31 walks and 50 innings pitched. So the command of the zone has not been there. I mean, the southpaw has just really not been having it at all this season, and you can really try and just hope that the Mets take advantage and could feast on this dude early. We know that when the Mets played the Padres last time, they only won one game in that series, and that was against Blake Snell, who they really, really beat up early on in this game. So if you can try and do that again, then, I mean, you can hopefully really try and, have some success against Blake Snell. Like I said, I don't know just what's going on with this dude, but he is a completely different pitcher than what really all of us have seen, with this time with the Rays. So, yeah, he really needs to figure himself out. And obviously getting into game 3 and the final game set of this 3-game series, it is an ESPN Sunday Night Baseball game, which will be starting at 7 o'clock. And for the New York Mets, they will have Carlos "Cookie" Carrasco, who is currently 10-4 on the season, a 4.27 ERA, a 1.33 WHIP, 99 innings pitched, so he'll definitely get 100 innings pitched, 100 strikeouts. So overall, Carrasco also having a pretty good season. Like I said, has had maybe 1 or 2 starts where he's had some issues early on in the game. Kind of simply enough, just getting into his rhythm. But overall, with Carrasco, he seems to be really the first inning complexities don't really seem to be a concern. And he seems to just go into games and he's 100% ready. His stuff is looking on point. We've been seeing in the past where he'd go into games and his stuff isn't on point. But if he can have command of the zone and he's not giving up a lot of barrels and, opposite field hits and lucky hits, then he'll be fine. Overall, Carrasco doesn't walk many guys. The strikeouts are definitely up for him. Like we said, 100 strikeouts. You like to see that. The chase rate, 97th percentile in chase rate. So, I mean, you really like to see that. The curve, the spin on his curveball is really good. Hopefully, maybe he could use that a little bit more in the second half. But yeah, I mean, Carrasco really had a pretty acceptable first half from, compared to what he had in the past. I don't care about his ERA. He had a couple, he had 1 or 2 or 3 unfortunate starts this year. Otherwise, he's been more consistent than not. So Carrasco will be on the bump for Sunday Night Baseball. For the San Diego Padres, they will be having Joe Musgrove. Joe Musgrove also having a phenomenal season. Definitely Cy Young contention. 8-2 on the season, a 2.42 ERA, a 0.97 WHIP, 104 innings pitched, and 102 strikeouts. Musgrove really is picking up the Padres rotation slack. We know that the Padres rotation has really been riding pretty well with Darvish and Joe Musgrove. And Musgrove really, I mean, he's just a completely underrated guy. I mean, we didn't really talk about him a whole lot last year, but he had a pretty acceptable season last year. But I mean, he's much better, in my opinion. I mean, he doesn't throw very hard, which I guess is the one thing. But that slider has really been on point. That back foot door slider and that Gulf side slider, my apologies, has really been on point for him. So, yeah, I mean, we'll honestly just have to see how the Mets could go against Joe Musgrove. You take a look at the Mets numbers against a lot of this Padres team for starters tonight. Like we said, tonight they will be facing Yu Darvish. Mets don't have the best numbers against Yu Darvish. Even when, Darvish was a Cub, and I think the one time they played against him as a Ranger, His numbers, against this Mets lineup are definitely favoring him. As we could see, Alonso in 7 at-bats only has a homer off of him with a 143 average. Eduardo Escobar, 14 at-bats, 214 average with the homer off of him. Marte has pretty good numbers off of him in 14 at-bats at 357 average. Same for Lindor, 13 at-bats, 385 average with 4 ribbies. But McNeil, 9 at-bats, a 111 average. Nimo, 3 at-bats, is yet to get a hit off of him. So, Darvish definitely does have the numbers against the Mets. Like I said, if you're going to really take any game of this series to have a rubber match, it's definitely game 2 with Blake Snell. Mets have pretty good numbers against Blake Snell, considering how he's been, especially lately. And he's like the one lefty who hopefully you can try and take advantage of early on because, Snell is the guy who could struggle early on, but then really get into his groove, in the 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th inning. So you got to get to him early. And with Musgrove, Mets have pretty fair numbers against him, to say for the least. So, yeah, we will honestly have to see how things can go there. Like we said, Mets are going into the second half, 58-35, 28-15 at home. Currently, some guys, I guess, to keep an eye out for this Padres series. One guy that I think definitely can be named is Brandon Nimo. Nimo, before going into the All-Star break, definitely has been a huge run creation. He's really been driving in a lot of runs. The home run ball has been a little bit of a thing. A lot of line drives for Nimo, so he's been doing a pretty good job in the last dozen or so games. So I think Nimo is definitely a guy to keep out for. Considering that it's the Padres. Kind of played in California, not in the same division or same league, but, they played each other more than not, especially in 2020. I'm going to go Starling Marte. Starling Marte has definitely been pretty red hot, especially going into the All-Star break. And then my third and final guy, I'm going to go Jeff McNeil. I think obviously having two righties on the mound one day is definitely going to be a nice assist for McNeil. So those are my 3 guys that I think you guys should definitely keep an eye out for going into this New York Mets and San Diego Padres series preview. So I'm super excited for that. For the New York Mets case, you'd like to take 2 of 3. I think a sweep is possible. I know someone said in the chat that the Padres have not been, the best lately. And yeah, I mean, taking a look at their last 5 games prior to the All-Star break, they're 2-3. They're obviously 2-3 in their last 5. They have a little bit of an interesting schedule, a little bit easy, a lot of division matchups against the Dodgers and Giants and Rockies. They have a couple interleague games between the Tigers and Twins later on. But this is going to be a big series for the Padres too. They're 10 games over 500, and that, 10 and a half games back from the Dodgers. So we'll see. I mean, they played against the Diamondbacks in a 3-game set, took 2 of 3. They lost the series to the Rockies. I don't know what it is, but the Padres can just not win a series in Colorado. I don't know what it is about the Padres, but they just cannot win at Coors Field. I think I read something where they haven't won a series at Coors Field in 15 years. So, yeah, I mean, I don't know. Padres are going to have to figure something out at Coors Field, especially being a division rival. But we're not talking about that. We're talking about them and the Mets because, so we're just going to have to see how things can go there. So now let's get into your guys' comments, questions, and concerns. We have some great stuff to talk about. We are going into the second half. We have a lot of great potential to talk about. We know the trade deadline is coming up. So that is definitely going to be of topic to talk about. We know that there's been, a lot of Juan Soto stuff. And yeah, I mean, it's going to be super exciting to talk about going into the second half. So let's stop wasting any more time and let's dive right into it. Let's get the chat pulled up. I'm going to have to read it off my phone, unfortunately, because my StreamYard, it's coming up as too small and I can't read it. So Martin says, LFGM, what's going on, Martin? Appreciate you tuning in. Gio says, what up, Hayden? How's your summer going? I'm at baseball camp all summer, but I've been trying to follow the Mets as much as I can. Well, that's good, man. I do know you play baseball. I think you and I have briefly conversed in the past. But that's really cool, man. Yeah, hopefully keep grinding and keep doing well, man. Appreciate you tuning in. Stoney, what's going on, man? Long time no see. Says, what's up, little bro? Not much, man. Jose, what's going on, brother? Appreciate you tuning in. Trey, what's going on? Ibinos, Peter, Mark, Cal, Karen, Marco, what's going on, everyone? Cal says, what's up, Hayden? If the Mets play anywhere from 500 to 550 ball in the second half, they'll be fine. Yeah, I mean, I kind of agree with you on that, Cal. The one part where I get a little iffy on them playing exactly 500 ball or a little bit over is if you want to win the division. And considering how teams like the Braves have been getting really hot, are they going to cooperate? Are the Braves going to play, 600 ball? Are they going to play, it depends how hot the Braves are going to be. And even the Phillies too, you never know. So, I understand, if the Mets play 500 ball, they'll still be 20 games over, but the Braves could be 25 games over. You never know. And I get it, as long as you get a wild card spot, who cares? I think this year's a little bit more interesting considering that you do have that extra wild card spot, so I don't think it would put as much of stress on the Mets, considering that, you have that extra wild card spot. And having that extra wild card spot means you don't need to go after, the division spot. I'm just trying to think how I want to say this. Just because now you don't have to go after the division, still, don't get me wrong, you want to go after the division. Who doesn't want to see the Mets crowned as the NL East champions? Considering that, really the last 10 years, I guess early in the 2010s, it was the Nationals, and now it's recently been the Braves. So, maybe the Mets starting, going into a new decade, you would like to try and, get the Mets to have a division title, considering that they only had one last decade, and that was in 2015. So, like I said, I get it. You got the extra wild card spot, so I'm not like, oh my God, we need to get the division. But I think having the division would be big. And I get it. Now the wild card spot isn't one game. It's a best of 3. So you'd have to take 2 to win. So I guess that also is a little bit of a better factor. It's not like just one game will determine it. I could tell you from 2016. But, it's going to be really interesting. Kobe says, hey, Hayden, what's up? Time for the second half. I'm super excited. Yeah, you and me both, man. Stoney says, do you think the Mets will get Juan Soto? Yeah, listen, with Juan Soto, it's really interesting. I don't want to say it's not possible. Anything could happen. I was coming on this channel saying there's no way that the Mets would get Max Scherzer, and look what happened. I don't want to say it's not possible. I think Soto is a completely different character on a whole other level. He's a perennial all-star, future, MVP, possibly Hall of Fame if he keeps up the pace he's going. 23 years old and has the accomplishments that not many even players have. So I think it's really fascinating that you have the opportunity to get this dude. I think there are some factors that would be interesting. For starters, you are going to have to get rid of a lot of the farm. You are going to have to clear out a lot of guys. You're probably going to have to get rid of an Alvarez. You would probably have to get rid of a Mauricio and or a Beatty. Probably have to get rid of 1 or 2 pitching prospects and at least 1 MLB player active, whether that's a Dom Smith or JD or Mazika or someone. So you're definitely going to be getting rid of a lot. And I think the Mets, definitely have had a good draft. This year, we know that Calvin Ziegler was drafted last year. He's kind of the eye of last year's draft. But I think it's really just going to come down to are the Mets willing to kind of get rid of the farm and kind of, I don't want to say destroy their farm because they'll still have a couple good guys in there regardless. But are the Mets willing to kind of liquidate a little bit of their farm for Juan Soto? You could obviously build it back. And, considering that the Mets have had, 5 picks in the first 90 picks, this season is definitely a good thing to take into accountability. And considering how well Billy Epler has been drafting this year, with Cohen, obviously, we'll see. The cost is going to be a lot. When it comes to keeping Soto, I'm not worried about that. Obviously, Soto is going to cost probably $500 million, if not, 450, 475, 500. So he's probably going to be the richest contract in MLB. He is a Boris guy, I believe. So that's going to make it much more interesting. The years is also something. He's 23. Are you going to give him 10 years? Nationals gave him 15. Are the Mets going to want another, Bobby Bonilla type? I don't think so. Mets have kind of proved that they're interested in signing long-term deals. We saw with Lindor. He has that 10-year, 11-year offer. So we'll see with Soto. He's not set to hit the free agent market, until two years. It's really just going to depend on the Mets willing to give up the prospects, and then when you have them on this team, get them for the right price and for the right AAV and the years. We'll see. I'm more worried about what you're going to give up than once he's here. I think it'd be much easier to keep him, considering that you have Cohen, you have Epple, you have much better ownership and a much better front office, arguably one of the best in MLB, you could say, as of now. There's a lot to take into accountability with Soto. If the scenario he's on this team, like we said, you could put him in the outfield, you could put him as a DH. I know he's not the best defensively, so maybe you could put him in left and he could split time in left field with Canna and they could DH, whatever. But just there's not many opportunities where teams could get players like this. Do I think it's possible? Sure. I think it's honestly like 50-50 at this rate. Anything could happen. That's really all it is. I never would have thought that Max Scherzer would be on this team, and he is. When it comes to SNY, I don't listen to a word those people say. I live in Florida, so I don't have SNY on my TV. I follow them on Twitter, and the stuff that Andy Martino and Sal Licata say, you really just have to take half of it with a grain of salt. All of these other beat reporters, I don't know. Whatever it is, you got to take it with a grain of salt. And apologize. Sorry about that, guys. I don't know what happened to screen. Okay, hopefully it looks fine. I don't really know what happened there. It says my Wi-Fi is a little weak. They are doing construction a couple houses away from me, so that could be a possibility. It looks pretty fun. I think we're good. My apologies about that, guys. I don't know. My screen was just went black for a minute and thought my computer shut off. But yeah, hopefully we are fine. I see we got 15 of you guys in the chat. I appreciate that. Sorry, it seems we had some technical issue, but we are fine now. So yeah, but what is going on? Alex, appreciate you tuning in. Trey, what's going on? Trey says, our rotation is disgusting, filthy, top shelf, so sweet. Playoffs are going to be fun. Playoffs are going to be fun. See y'all at Citi Field in October and September. Yeah, Trey, I'll tell you, the second half is really going to be a ride. I loved the second half on what we saw out of this 2019 squad. And simply enough, if we can get that this year, within my opinion, a better rotation, a better offensive lineup, and hopefully a better bullpen. Well, most likely it is because we haven't blown as many games. It's gonna be an insane ride. I think this team is obviously much better than the 2019 team. I think it's pretty obvious to say. But yeah, we'll have to see. Padres have been very bad lately, says Galapos. Yeah, I don't want to say they've been bad, but they definitely have been a little bit of a slump lately. The offense has been a little bit quiet. Their pitching's been pretty good. Like we said, that Musgrove and Darvish back-to-back core has been pretty good for them. So like I said, I don't want to jinx it, but Hopefully we can try and get the job done against the San Diego Padres. That's the biggest thing is, like I said, take 2 of 3 and I'm happy. That's all I'm going to say is take 2 of 3 and I'm happy. Marco says, let's buckle in for a great second half. Let's go Mets. Yeah, absolutely, man. Super excited. Trey says they should just start DeGrom same day as Peterson. Have DeGrom go 4 or 5 innings, then bring in Peterson to finish the game or go until the 9th. That's not horrible. I kind of like that idea, honestly, considering that DeGrom is going to take David Peterson's spot in the rotation. Considering that, like I said, it's kind of like, what are you going to do with David Peterson? I mean, kind of what are you going to do with the rotation is a full other question. Most likely, McGill, Peterson, and Williams are going to go to the bullpen. Like I've always discussed, that Burns and Woodruff approach like the Brewers have done in past years. I've said it 1,000 times on this channel, and I'm going to say it again. So who knows? Little stuff like that probably is going to happen in the second half. Peterson will go in the bullpen. We've discussed, considering that you need a southpaw in that bullpen to cover Dolly Rodriguez. And then you have Williams, Peterson in the bullpen, who could honestly be starters. So you could have them go 4 or 5 innings in the bullpen if you just need, your guys like Lugo, May, whoever, just to get days rest. I mean, that could be huge, really, really huge. So, yeah, like I said, we're going to have to see how the Mets kind of go to approach, Jacob deGrom. Obviously, being honest with you guys, they are going to be very careful with him coming in. They're not going to want to have to worry about him getting hurt again or, fatigue or sore or whatever the situation is going to be. So simply enough, with Jacob deGrom, they're really going to go, like, they're going to be really anal about him. They really are. He's probably only going to go 3 or 4 innings, his first appearance, and he's probably only going to have a certain pitch count. He's going to be conversing with Hefner, the medical staff, the athletic trainers, and Showalter, probably nonstop. But I have no problem with that. For deGrom's days, you're going to have to build him up. Who knows? Maybe his first appearance, like we said, in AAA or in A-ball, wherever he's pitching. I think he was in Port St. Lucie and Binghamton, whatever. In A-ball right now, I think he went 40 pitches or 60 pitches the other day? He went 60 pitches. So consider at the MLB level, maybe it's going to be a little bit more harder at bats. Maybe he goes, 60 pitches. So considering how much that is, he's a strikeout pitcher. Could he be in a lot of fair high counts or long counts, as I should say? So maybe you get deGrom, 4 or 5 innings, right? And then thing is, you don't want to wear out your bullpen. So you could put in Peterson for 3 or 4 innings. I agree with you on that. That's not a bad idea. And considering that Peterson, also his pitch count has really been really weird lately. So yeah, good idea, Trey. Kobe says the NL hasn't won a game. The National League hasn't won an All-Star game in a while. They have won 3 since 1996. Yeah, they have just not been having it lately. I don't know what it is. I know they used to have it where it was whichever league wins it, they'll get the home field advantage in the World Series. And there was a reason that the NL never, the World Series Game 1 was never in the National League ballpark. So who would have think in 2015 maybe things could have sorry, someone's texting me. Who knows? Definitely maybe in 2015 things could have definitely been a little bit different. So no, but that's the past. But yeah, definitely hopefully next year the NL can try and win. I mean it was close this year, 3-2. But yeah. Mets talk with Lewis. What's going on, man? Appreciate you tuning in. Cal says, sure, we trade Alvarez for Soto. There's only going to make the catching situation worse because we'll still have McCann, Nito, and Mazika struggling to hit. Yeah, no, that's a good point. And the thing is, everyone's saying, I don't have a problem with simply enough trading Francisco Alvarez away for Soto. But are you going to get a catcher in return? Are you going to go after a catcher at the deadline, man? Are you going to go after a Contreras or a Murphy or someone or Keibert Ruiz? I mean, if you have a Soto and Keibert Ruiz in the package, okay. But you're going to need a catcher back because everyone is, the same people that are saying, I'm done with McCann, Nito, and Mazika, call up Alvarez, are then saying, I have no problem trading away Alvarez for Soto. So it's it's great if Soto's on this team, but he's not going to solve the catching solution. Unless, obviously, he goes out there and catch, which he's not. So, yeah. And, I mean, even when you're done with McCann in 2 years, Nito's not going to be a full-time catcher in 2 years. I doubt it. I mean, you're really going to put all your trust in Hayden Senger or Mayer, whatever his name is. I don't even know him. That's why. I mean, you drafted Kevin Parada, but he's not going to be up till 2025. How old is Kevin Parada? Like 18? He's in college, so how old is Kevin Parada? Yeah, he's 20 years old. Okay, same age as Alvarez, but point is he is yet to ever play an A-ball. He's still in college, or I believe he has been. So, yeah, I mean, there's just no really time, I guess. Mets Talk with Lewis says, I'm going to the game tonight because it's WWE night. I hope to meet Roman Reigns there, LFGM. Oh, that's pretty cool. Yeah, I don't really follow much of that, but that's cool, man. Hopefully you do have a good time. Definitely enjoy it. Cal says, no immediate replacement in the farm. Yeah, exactly. I mean, 2025, 2024 at least, considering that he hasn't even played a game in A-ball. Yeah, he's the same age as Alvarez, but Alvarez didn't go to college. Alvarez was drafted in the international draft from somewhere in South America. I couldn't tell you where, but Stoney says, yes, long time no see. I can't get on Discord. I put my password. I connected Discord support and they can't help me. Is there any other way I could chat with you? Yeah, there is, Stoney. If you have Twitter, you could always follow me on Twitter. We could DM, we could chat, we could do, really whatever, I guess. So you could definitely reach out with me on Twitter. That's a great way to reach out with me. If you have Instagram, I'm on that a little bit. I have Facebook, but I don't really use it that much. But I would say Twitter is probably the best way. I do have Discord. I'm not on it a whole lot. To be honest with you guys, I'm really not on Discord a lot. So yeah, I would say Twitter is probably the best way you could reach out with me. Or obviously on here. Trey says starters to bullpen would be Carrasco and maybe Peterson, McGill. McGill is only that I think plays well in the bullpen. Yeah, I mean, I understand Peterson. Like you said, you want some left-handed presence in the rotation would be nice. I've advocated that thousands of times. So, yeah, I mean, that obviously could be an important factor. Yeah, I mean, Carrasco's going to be in the rotation. I'm here. Let's go Mets, says Connor. Absolutely. Connor says in 2015, we got Addison Reed. And that goofy guy with glasses whose name I can't remember, and Yoenis Cespedes. If the coupons could pull that off, just imagine what Cohen and Epler could do. Yeah, I mean, that's a really good point that you bring up. At the time in 2015, you look at that core, and they really valued their pitching. I mean, they didn't really have much of an offensive they didn't really have much offensive production. I mean, they didn't really have a whole lot of power. And simply enough, you brought in Cespedes and, guys like Michael Kadire and Eric Campbell and guys that were really kind of like an island of misfit toys, not to reference Moneyball, but they just really simply enough just got the job done like the Braves did last year. The Braves, they won the deadline last year. Can the Mets do that again? If you could win the deadline this year, or simply enough, like let's say you got Baez this year instead of last year, and Baez put up the numbers he put up with the Mets in the second half for them this year, then that'd be amazing. So like I said, who you can go after is definitely a guy to be, talking about. There's plenty of guys that the Mets have expressed interest in. Like I said, you're going to need bullpen help. Like you said, the goofy guy with glasses and Addison Reed. Every year, really, teams that are buying go after bullpen and pitching because it's just a simple, easy kind of, position to go after. It's cheap. It's not much. It's usually, just for the next 2 months or, usually relievers aren't on long-term deals. So that's, I guess, a big factor why a lot of teams go after relievers. And can you blame them? But, yeah, like I said, a DH is going to be the biggest thing. I think a DH. A big bat in this lineup, a guy that could bat behind Alonso or bat in that 5th or 6th spot is going to be huge. Stoney says Epler has been a beast so far. He really has. In my opinion, I think he's a really underrated GM. Going into it, a lot of people were kind of weary of him because, he was with the Angels and, they didn't really address their needs, which were starting pitching the last couple years. But it's hard because, like, they have ownership that isn't really willing to spend on guys like besides Trout. I mean, they extended Trout. They signed Rendon, which has been horrible. But, like, they really haven't spent a lot since then, considering that they're an LA team, or Anaheim, whatever. They don't really spend. So everyone kind of blamed Epler. It wasn't really Epler. It was more the front office and the higher-ups, the president of operations and the owner in Anaheim. That wasn't really doing much. I think Epler, he did a phenomenal job. Epler brought in a guy by the name of Shohei Ohtani to the Angels. So, yeah, really, Billy Epler. The Mets got really lucky this offseason. Bringing in Billy Epler and Buck Showalter, MLB really neglected both of those dudes. Just no teams were interested in them, and they really are going to regret it. Stoney says, yeah, either Martino said we wasn't getting Scherzer or Soto, like you said, take with a grain of salt. Yeah, and honestly, SNY is just, like I said, I don't live in New York. I live in Florida. I used to live in New York, and I used to have SNY, and I don't think Martino and all those guys were on it really yet. But because right now it's Sterling Equities, I think, that owns SNY, like 70%, which is the Wilpons. Just sell it out and get, like, new guys that are actually good. Joe says, not even a question you empty the farm for Soto. This isn't a regular player. He's arguably the best hitter in baseball who's only 23 and getting better. Yeah, Soto, like you said, Joe, Soto's the one or few guys in MLB that is just a perennial player. Future Hall of Famer likely. I could just go down the list of the accomplishments he's had at 23 years old. Like I said, it's going to be really interesting to see if the Mets do go after Soto, what you give up. I have no problem giving up like a Mauricio in that. Alvarez would be the only kind of like, because then, like I said, what do you do with your catching down the line? Unless you go after a guy like Keibert Ruiz or Wilson Contreras, okay. But then if you just go after no catching, then you're going to have, that kind of leaves you a hole for your catching down the line. And I'm not getting stuck with McCann. But, yeah, Joe, I agree with you 100%. Soto's the guy that I would really lay out anything for in terms of prospects. Just simply enough looking at a lineup of, Alonso, McNeil, Lindor, Escobar when he's playing well, Canna, Marte, and then Soto. It's just, jeez, you can't even imagine. It's insane. Damn, my mouse died. Hold on. Sony says, my Wi-Fi is always weak. Yeah, I don't know what it is, but lately my Wi-Fi, you know what it is? They're doing a lot of construction on my street, so I don't know. Maybe they messed something up. I really couldn't tell you. Kobe says, as much as we all want a championship and win now, Cohen wants sustained success and be one of the very best teams every year like the Dodgers. Gutting the farm for Soto prevents this after Brody. Yeah, I will say, though, you gutted the farm for Brody for the wrong guys, though. Yes, Diaz was a great asset. Could you have gave something else up instead of Jared Kalanick? Okay. But I think Alvarez and Beatty are on a whole other level than Kalanick, especially Alvarez. Alvarez is probably going to be the number one pick, and he already is, because, Riley Green will probably no longer be a prospect since he's been playing in MLB for a certain amount of time. So, yeah, as of right now, it's tough. There's two types of people. There's people that say, I don't care about the farm. I'm in a win now mode. And there's people that say, well, I'm in a win now mode, but you also have to think for the future. And you can't just, I guess, simply enough put gaps and holes in between a lot of our positions. Like I said, for example, the catching position for the future in the farm. If you get rid of Alvarez, like I said, what are you going to do? So there's little stuff like that. I understand where people are coming from, and there's two sides. There really is. Timothy, what's going on, Timothy? Timothy says, Hayden, should the Mets trade Dom Smith, Zappucki, and prospects Francisco Alvarez, Brett Beatty, Ron Mauricio for the Nationals for Juan Soto? Yeah, it isn't bad, honestly. I would do it. Trey says, did the Mets win the Edwin Diaz trade? Steve Cohen owes Robbie Cano some 25 and so on. We lost the trade to the Mariners. As for Edwin Diaz, he hasn't been playoff tested. Yeah, like I get it. This is what I say. You consider the trade a success when Edwin Diaz strikes out or gets the final batter out to win the World Series. That's what I'll say. Or wins a reliever of the year. I don't know. Joe says, imagine what we can do with Alonso and Lindor protecting him in the lineup. I mean, Joe, it would be insane simply enough to think about. Like I said, a lineup of Alonso, McNeil, Nimo, Lindor, Marte, Soto, and the rest of this Mets team is just insane to think about. I mean, I just can't even put it into words. So, yeah, I mean, like you said, like we said, going after Soto, we could sit on here all day and talk about it. Right now, I really think it's 50-50. I really do. But, yeah. Sorry about that. I don't know why my internet has been horrible lately. Connor says, what would you rate Buck Showalter so far? I can't believe no team was interested in him as a manager. Yeah, man. I mean, like we said before, I mean, the fact is that no teams really were interested in him is shocking. A lot of people thought that Showalter was simply enough just outdated and that he wasn't going to succeed with an MLB team. They thought that he was very anti-analytic, and I don't know where all those rumors came from. Those were debunked. Simply enough to say Baltimore had a horrible analytic team. And simply enough, towards the end of his career in Baltimore, towards the end of Buck's managerial career in Baltimore, that's really how it was there. Like we said, the analytics, I think, in my opinion, was just a rumor. I don't really know why people really thought that. Just because he's old. Keep in mind, I mean, he was a guy who kind of invented a lot of he wasn't involved in Moneyball, but was managing during those times and picked up some of those tips. With the Orioles and the Diamondbacks and Yankees. And we know in the past that Showalter's been a guy where he'd get you to the playoffs, but not necessarily to the World Series. And right now, get to the playoffs, and then we'll talk. Get to the playoffs. This is a team that hasn't been to the playoffs since 2016, then 2015, and then before that, it's been a while. So simply enough, just get to the playoffs, and then we could talk. Like we said, teams like the Yankees have different agenda because they get to the playoffs every year. Their goal is to win the World Series. But for the Mets, it's to win the World Series, but get to the wild card or, NLDS at least. And then you build off of that. That's what I say. Daniel says, I like the idea of acquiring Vogelback to replace Smith and Drury and replace JD Davis. Daniel says, I like the idea of acquiring Vogelback to replace Smith and Drury to replace JD Davis. Also, Robertson and Mantiply or Chafin. Yeah, Vogelback could be nice. Definitely a big power beast, big unit. Taking a look at some of Daniel Vogelback's stats. I believe he's with the Pirates. Correct me if I'm wrong. Yes, he was with the Pirates this year. He was with the Brewers last year. Yeah, I mean, a 117 OPS plus, a 769 OPS, 12 homers, 34 ribbies, 40 walks, 67 strikeouts. Yeah, I mean, he's definitely a nice power guy. I mean, offering you slugging of 430. And like we said, that this team doesn't have much power. He could definitely bring, some type of solution to that. So I have no problem with Vogelback. And like you said, you could probably get him on a relatively cheap deal considering, it is Pittsburgh. Drury would be nice. It'd be kind of odd trading for a guy that we let walk in the offseason. But hey, if that's the what you got to do to win, go for it. You could also get another guy in the Reds, whether that's like a Tyler Mahle or Luis Castillo. I know that starting pitching hasn't been our main concern and interest going into the deadline. It's been bullpen, but hey, I mean there's bullpen arms out there. Edwin Diaz's brother, I forgot his name, but he's a relief pitcher for the Reds. I don't know if he's a closer. He may just be a typical reliever. He's a possibility, and then you could throw in a Drury. So, I mean, yeah, there's some talent there. Robertson, obviously, like we said, nice guy there, veteran pitcher. He's a ground ball guy, simple guy. If a guy's out in a jam, Robertson comes in, ground ball double play, boom. Mantiply, also another good guy. I believe he's with the Diamondbacks. Chafin, also another great guy. Like I said, bullpen arms, they're really kind of hard to assess just because, how streaky they are and, the situations they're in. But, yeah, like I said, bullpen and DH, which is pretty much what we have here. Mary Prod, what's going on, man? I appreciate you tuning in. Joe says, I could even see Uncle Stevie taking on all the bad contracts from the Nationals, not tempting the farm. And that would actually be a really good point that you bring up there, Joe. If you could pick up that Patrick Corbin contract and take on that $20 million, then maybe that'll decrease. I don't want to say decrease Soto's value, but maybe that'll, take off one or two guys that the Mets would have to give up from their farm system. So that's a really good point that you bring up there. I mean, it probably really have to be a Patrick Corbin. Strasburg, I don't know. He's on a big contract. It's just he hasn't been healthy. So, that's been the big thing. Yeah, that's kind of a factor of it also. So, yeah, we'll have to see. Daniel says, what did you think of the home run derby and all-star game? I was upset with the home run derby. I really wanted Pete to win. He looked really ready, but unfortunately it was just not his time. Julio Rodriguez put up the better numbers. He hit more homers, hit him better. And, for Soto, good for him. He really put up a good fight. I kind of wanted Rodriguez to win. Like I said, if Alonso wasn't going to win, I probably would have liked to see Julio Rodriguez take home the home run trophy. But oh well, good show. I really will say for the least. Honestly, I thought Pujols was going to take it for a minute. When Pujols beat Schwarber, I'm like, imagine Pujols just wins it all. That would be insane. But yeah, a home run derby was definitely cool, definitely enjoyable. I wanted Alonso to take the three-peat, but there's always next year. I think next year's is in Seattle, so he'll have a ball there on the West Coast with the thin air. All-Star game was cool, like we said. We saw Pete Alonso. He walked. He had one plate appearance, and he walked. And then we had Jeff McNeil, who had two plate appearances, got hit by pitch in one, and then grounded out in the other. So that was really interesting to see. Our New York Mets representing in LA, we had four guys, as stated. Pete Alonso, Jeff McNeil, Edwin Diaz, and Starling Marte. So super fun week. No Mets, which I love watching the Mets, but it was nice to just have a break. And it was kind of cool to see Alonso and McNeil at bat when it didn't really matter and didn't affect their stats. So I kind of enjoyed that. Daniel says, I don't think the Mets overpay for Soto. Then their farm system would be gutted, and also having to take in Corbin's contract. I would wait until Soto becomes a free agent. And that's the thing, is I don't think the Nationals are going to keep him, though. That's my only concern, is I don't think the Nationals are going to keep him until 2024, I think 2025. I would really have a hard time seeing that, considering that their relationship is really not good right now. I think the Nationals didn't want to fly Soto out, to LA, and they made him get his own flight. So they're not on good terms. So I think the odds of him staying there next year, the odds of Soto being on the opening day roster for them next year would be pretty rare, in my opinion. It's possible. I have said that I feel like Soto could be more of an off-season blockbuster trade, but just considering how, I guess, kind of the Nationals are going to be at the deadline, they're pretty much out of it. Are they just going to want to say, okay, just get Belle out, get Soto out, and just restart fresh? That's probably the route they've been taking, considering that Turner's no longer on the team, Scherzer's no longer on the team. A lot of their 2019 guys are pretty much gone or retired. So that's just the route they took. Seth says, do the Braves ever play anyone who is good? I know the schedules are virtually the same, but every time I look at the Braves have a run of cupcake teams to play. So let's see who the Braves are playing. I know now they're playing a 3-game set against the Angels, then a 3-game set against the Phillies, 3 against the D-backs, 2 against the Phillies, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 against the Braves. From August 4th, 5th, 6th, 6th, and 7th, they have a 5-game series against the Mets. So that's going to be a huge 5 days or 5 games for the Mets. That's going to determine a lot. Yeah, the Braves have some I mean, they have a lot of in-division games with the Mets, Phillies, and Marlins. You have some interleague games with the Astros and Mariners. I mean, I'd say their schedule's okay. I mean, I'd say it's probably more easier than not. I think they have more teams that are 500 and below. I mean, the Mets have an interesting schedule. I mean, they have a okay August. Their August is going to be interesting. I mean, going into August, you have a lot of division matchups, nationals, so that should hopefully be easy. But then you play the Braves a lot. You play the Phillies a bit. I mean, think about it. The Mets have only played the Braves in one series before, the most recent one. But now a good thing is the trade deadline is August 2nd. So you're going to be playing the Braves in one series, two series, and three series. You're going to play the Braves in three more series after the trade deadline. So that's huge. Yeah, you can make the argument the Braves could better their team at the trade deadline, and we saw it last year, who they brought in. We saw it last year. But you could even make the case for the Mets. So I think I'd feel much more comfortable the Mets playing the Braves following the trade deadline. That way that their weaknesses have been kind of figured out. So, yeah. Thoughts on Travis Blankenhorn? Yeah, obviously taking over the role from Dominic Smith. We saw him a little bit last year. I mean, there isn't really a whole lot to say about Blankenhorn. He's 25 years old. For some reason, I thought he was much younger. I don't know why. I mean, we saw in the small sample size last year, 26 at-bats, 5 hits, 192 average, 80 OPS plus, 673 OPS. He has a little bit of power, 423 slugging, so his power is okay. But seeing him I believe he was playing in AAA for most of the part of the season, his stats are okay. I never knew he played for the Twins for some reason. Yeah, just a bench bat for the most part. Daniel says, I understand why the Mets called up Blankenhorn instead of Vientos. The Mets needed a left-handed bat. Maybe Blankenhorn can crush the cover off the ball. Yeah, I mean, that's also a good point, the left-handed bat, considering that Dom is a lefty. You kind of do want that left-handed presence coming off of the bench, so that is going to be important. Yeah, I never really realized how much depth the Mets have in left-handed at-bats, considering that you have two switch hitters in Lindor and Escobar. I don't think there's many lineups in MLB that have two switch hitters. I'm sure there are, but the Mets have never really had it much in their history. Yeah, but I really do kind of like the Blankenhorn call up to replace Dominic Smith. Obviously, Dominic Smith is on the IL, and honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if Dom gets traded while on the IL, just considering really how bad he's been playing, and I guess just how desperate the Mets are to get some production from their DH role. I mean, Dom Smith has been doing absolutely nothing in the DH spot. I mean, it's pretty obvious to say he has been doing pretty much nothing. So it's really not worth a shot. Like I said, it's not going to kill you if you call up a guy like Blankenhorn or Vientos. It's worth a shot. Considering that you're getting really literally no production from your DH role, just go for it. I mean, what's the worst that's going to do? Is simply enough. I mean, the worst is what? They get sent down? Daniel says, what are your thoughts about the Mets draft picks? Yeah, I mean, I really do like them. Kevin Parada for starters. Kind of interesting to pick up a catcher considering that you have Alvarez. And, I mean, I know you could have backup catchers. You have Senger, you have Mayer. So I get that. But kind of a little bit interesting for starters. Although you don't really see many catchers, power catchers, and we know that the Mets already have a power catcher in Francisco Alvarez, a lot of hard contact. He's a unit. But then you also got that in Kevin Parada, who is really advanced at the plate, and for a power hitter has, really good, walk to strikeout numbers. So that's Parada. Obviously, you do have Tidwell also, who has a very nice fastball from what I've seen. I know someone mentioned in the live stream chat last stream to check out some of his highlights because he's a really quick thrower and is really sneaky with the stuff. So I watched it, and he is. He has a great fastball. So Tidwell, another good pickup. Mets have had a really good draft. I know that a lot of beat reporters came out, and just simply overall, like, people that like, kind of review and rank and assess each team's draft. A lot of people came out and said the Mets definitely have won the draft. I heard a couple people say the Tigers and Rangers and what have you, but a lot of people were saying the Mets have won it, or were top 2, top 3, top 4, even top 5. So it's good to see the Mets have a successful draft. Considering last year, we know what happened. Kumar Rocker, and then he was really who you were going to build your draft around, and it didn't really work out. So I'm really glad that the Mets, have simply enough went after a much bigger draft this year, draft class. The draft class was pretty good. Like we said, you needed to go after starting pitching and outfield depth, and you did that. We know that the Mets, have plenty of infield depth, third base, first, second, short. They're stacked with that. So it's good to see them go after, outfield and pitching, and simply enough catcher. Joe says Syracuse and Binghamton are like, we'll do as many rehaps as you want, so as long as we can keep selling games. I was going to say Binghamton got like 5 of their biggest attendances this year in their history from just DeGrom and Scherzer being there. I mean, it's really funny. Cal says, hopefully Joey Lucchesi can come back soon. Yeah, I think that he is throwing batting practice to hitters. So that's a good thing to see. Like we said, his stuff is there. All of his pitches, his curve, his slutter, all of his pitches are there. So that's very good to see in Joey Lucchesi. Hasn't pitched in about a year. He had Tommy John like July of last year. So it's a year, like we said, to recover from Tommy John. So really good to see him back. Like we said, another guy who is a lefty, can be a starter. So, I mean, the depth you're going to have when, simply enough, DeGrom, Scherzer, Carrasco, Bassett, Walker. Then you get into Lucchesi, Williams, Peterson, McGill. I mean, I just can't wrap my brain around that. I mean, you have what? 2 rotations? I mean, yeah, that's just insane to think that you'll have 2 rotations of baseball. I mean, it's just mind-boggling to think. I mean, 2 rotations practically. Well, it's 9, but hey, who knows? There's some teams that ride on 4-man rotations. Does it work for them? No. But it's something that can happen, especially maybe even in the playoffs, if you have an off day. I don't know. I can maybe see the Mets doing that in the postseason. If you have like an off day, riding a 4-man rotation. But I just think you have so much depth on why would you want to do that? Joe says, with Soto in the lineups, you won't need your catcher to hit. Yeah, I mean, that's 100% true, Joe. As of right now, looking at the lineup, and I've said this a lot on my past streams, is that right now, when, this year you brought in the DH to the NL. So I said to myself, okay, now that we're going to see JD Davis or Dom Smith or whoever our DH going into the season to hit, I won't care about McCann's offense. But now we're seeing no production from our DH. I need our catchers to hit. Because now we have the 8 and 9 hole in our DH and our catcher position doing nothing. So bringing in Soto solves your DH solution. And you could just focus on the 1 through 8 hitters to hit. And you could worry about the catchers catch. If you could, listen, when it comes to catchers offense, if they could hit like 230, 220, I'll take it. McCann's 170, average and his 300 OPS, which is a batting average theoretically. No, you're going to need a little bit more than that because something like that. But like I said, I'm not crazy about catcher's offense, but right now I am just because we have no, like you said, we have no production from our DH. But like you said, Joe, bringing in Soto, that would really solve a lot of things right there. And then you could just let McCann frame and do whatever, and you won't have to worry about him. So I agree with you 100%, Joe. That was a good comment. I like that. Syracuse. Oh no, I read that. I read that also. Just went over that. Sorry, I lost where I was. Marco says, "What's the news with Tyler McGill?" I don't know. He had like some back tightness. I believe that he should be back next month, is what Buck Showalter briefly said. I don't know, what his situation will be like when he comes back. I mean, what his pitch limit, how many innings, what his case and scenario is going to be. So as of right now, with Tyler McGill, like, it was weird. Like, he came back, he only pitched 2 games and then went, back to the IL. So kind of like Scherzer, he's, been on the IL probably longer than the season. I mean, listen, he really helped out this team in April and May, so I'll take it. But I mean, it would be really nice to have him back. Simply enough, having Tyler McGill back would really add some nice depth. And I mean, we never really saw him and DeGrom pitch in the same rotation at the same point. Douglas says, do you think the final days of J.D. Davis and Dom Smith are here? I do. Simply enough, a report came out yesterday saying that the Mets would be willing to trade Dom before the deadline. And considering that it is the 22nd, 23rd of July, it could honestly be any day now. And considering that Dom is on the IL, honestly, he may not even get another at-bat. If he's on the IL I think he's on the 10-day IL. He was on it since July 17th. They may trade him. They may activate him. And then, like, the moment he's activated, they put him in a package. I really can see that. JD, I don't know. JD's a little bit more harder because at least he's having a little bit of a better season than Dom. I get it. Dom can give you a little bit more because he plays a position, unlike JD, who, well, no, I mean, he won us the Cubs game. So if anything, he got us at least one win. So I'll give you that. At least he has power, unlike Dom. So I don't want to say that Dom is more useful than him. I don't know if that's true. But, yeah, I mean, we'll see. But I would say yes, honestly. Stoney says, yes, I got Twitter. What's your thing on there? I got Instagram too. What's your name on there? Yeah. If you want to follow me on Twitter, at Mets Hayden. When the stream ends on the little outro thing, it says my Mets Twitter. So you could follow me on there. And Instagram is just my name. So if you just go to my Twitter and read my first and last name, just plug it in on Instagram. Hayden_Jerglowitz, which is my last name. Daniel says, seeing that this year they added another wild card spot, be less sellers at the trade deadline. Do you think the Orioles, being in the wild card race, would be willing to trade Mancini? Yeah, Daniel, that's a really good point. Like you said, having the extra wild card spot, and that's why MLB did that, to motivate teams to stay in contention. So, like I said, when teams like the Reds went on a fire sale, really made me, scratch my head. So as of right now, the Orioles, who are literally 500, 46-46, they're going into a 3-game set against the division rival Yankees. As of right now, it'd be hard to see the Orioles selling. I think they can buy, considering how hot they've been since May. I mean, since May 17th, they're 33-23. And May 17th is when they called up Adley Rutschman. So, I mean, right now, could they trade Mancini? Sure, he could be on the block. But it's either the Orioles are going to sell a little bit. Like, I don't think they're going to go on like a big selling trade deadline. Like, they'll sell 1 or 2 pieces, or they will buy. It's really tough to see with the Orioles. I mean, we'll see how the next week goes, but they could take the Yankees series. I don't think they would sell. Even regardless of that, I don't know. It's tough. But, I mean, Mancini could be a guy possibly, yeah, considering if they want, younger and new guys. Trey says, biggest strength and weakness of the Mets so far. Strength, probably pitching. Weakness, probably being consistent. Only beef I have with Epler was trading Castro for Rodriguez. And honestly, though, I mean, I don't know. I feel like that trade's kind of been helping out Rodriguez. I think that's been a little bit of a factor. I mean, you look at Miguel Castro's stats in New York right now. I mean, he had a rough outing against Boston. How has he been? 4 ERA, 27 pitches. Yeah, I mean, let's compare the two. I mean, let's see. Of course, it's blocked. He's on the IL, Castro. So yeah, I mean, I don't know. I also heard Ohtani is in trade talk, so he could also get traded. Yeah, that's a long shot, though. Daniel says, do you really think a change of scenery for Josh Hader might turn his season around? He has been really bad lately. He's turning into a Aroldis Chapman. Yeah, he really has not been having it. I think he had like a start against San Francisco where he blew like a 5-run lead. So, I mean, we have not seen that out of him in a while. A change of scenery could be good. Like we said, relievers are streaky, but Hader's been a guy who's been consistent for more than none. So I'm really surprised that he's been slumping lately, but it could be possible. And with his value lower than it would have been last year, I think it could be possible. When will we be able to donate for you, bro? I want to donate so bad. Well, I appreciate that, Stoney. Usually how it works is I think you have to get monetized. And once you get monetized by having 1,000 subscribers and a certain amount of watch hours. So if you want, definitely tell, like we said, everyone, subscribe. Let's get me to 1,000 subscribers and we'll be monetized. But I really appreciate that, Stoney. That's very kind of you. Trey says, do you see the Mets calling up Matt Allen this year in 2022 or 2023? Neither. For starters, he hasn't pitched since 2019, I believe. He had Tommy John. No, he didn't have Tommy. No, he had the COVID season where he didn't pitch, and then he had Tommy John, which, it's normal for relievers or, minor leaguers, to have Tommy John. But since he didn't pitch in 2020, he had his, 2020 minor league camp. So I think they're going to want to at least give him at least half a season in the minor leagues. So I'd probably say 2024, Trey, to be honest. Connor says facts, of course. Trey says, which MLB team will go on a win streak and have a hot second half? Let's take a look at the standings. Well, I don't need to. I think I'm going to say the Mariners. The Mariners were on like a 15-game win streak, and I think they're still holding it going in. I'm going to say the Mariners, and I'll give you an NL. NL. Maybe the Cardinals. I could see the Cardinals going on a win streak. They did it last year and got them in the playoffs. Stoney says, bro, do you see our Mets winning the division this year? What do you think? It's going to be tough. Like we said, I think the playoffs are definitely realistic. It's either division or wild card. And it's really just going to be, can the Mets beat the Braves in a series? I think that's really what it's going to be. Peter says, should the Mets bring back Michael Conforto as a DH? As of right now, it really doesn't hurt, considering that you're getting really little to no production from your DH role. It's not going to hurt. We know that he had hit some elbow or arm injury during his, private spring training, and that he had surgery and that he was sidelined for pretty much this whole season. And we know that Scott Boras said that he'd be willing to sign with the team after the draft. The draft is over, so what are we waiting for, Mr. Scott Boras? So, like we said, now that he hasn't played in practically almost a year, just shy of 2 months, I think that will lower his value. We know that the Mets, gave him a qualifying offer and he declined it. But now that he had that elbow injury and he hasn't played at all this season, maybe that'll lower his value, and maybe that'll make him and Scott Boras come to their senses a little bit and say, okay, maybe I take the hometown discount a little bit, play, 2 months with the Mets, go into the offseason and see how things go there. Because we saw Conforto last year, and he had one of the worst time to have a slump, literally in your contract year, the worst time. So, we're honestly just going to have to see. I will say he got a little bit hotter in the second half. We saw him kind of tighten up his swing a little bit, but we're really going to have to see with Conforto. He'll probably sign, and we said, Scott Boras said that he's been speaking with a couple of teams, such as the Blue Jays. I think the Mets were of one. I don't know if the Mets, but I know the Blue Jays because he said it was a Canadian team, the Blue Jays. But he said four really good teams. So 4 teams that will be in playoff contention. So, take it as you want, I guess. Brad, what's going on? I appreciate the periods. Cal says, when the Mets got back into their groove of 2-out hitting, and hitters in running in scoring position. The Mets got. Oh, the Mets got to get out. Yeah, they really got to try and figure something out, with that, because that's just really going to be a killer for them. Whatever they were doing in the first half with runners in scoring position and 2 out hitting, you got to try and figure that out. So, yeah, I mean, we'll see. Kobe says, can the Mets trust Seth Lugo anymore? He's been having a really hard time since 2019. Yeah, I mean, he just has not been pinpointing accuracy on his changeup. His stuff is just, it hasn't been looking sharp. Like, we've seen 1 or 2 outings where his his changeup and his fastball are looking really elite, and he has a large pitch mix. He can be, he has been a starter in the past, so that's why he has a large pitch mix. And you thought that would be the benefit of the doubt because he has 5 pitches to choose from when facing a batter. As a reliever, that's pretty rare. Usually relievers have 2, maybe 3 pitches max. Lugo, no. So you really would have thought that would have been a big assist for him, but it just hasn't been. So, I mean, hopefully he can try and get back to his normal self. He really has been struggling really since 2020. So hopefully he can try and figure it out. Marco says, DeGrom, Scherzer, Carrasco, Bassett, Walker, McGill, Peterson, fire rotation, 100%. And then, I mean, you got to include Lucchesi, Williams, the depth there. That's 2 rotations right there. Trace, a scale of 1 to 10, what would you rate the Mets first half? I give them an 8. I give them a solid 8. Kobe says, you never know how these guys will pan out, but on paper, this is a really fantastic draft for the Mets. All 3 are widely seen as top 30 prospects with Parada at 3. Yeah, 100%. This draft really was a pretty success this year as of now. And Daniel says, who do you think the Mets will go after at the trade deadline? All right, so I am Hayden J, Mets GM. So in today's draft, it is August 2nd. Now, let me not. So if I'm the Mets GM, I would definitely try and go after some bullpen arms. Like you said, you have a Robertson. You're David Robertson from Chicago. I would go after that. Probably another arm would be ideal. So at least 2 bullpen arms would be nice. If one's a lefty, that'd be great. I'd go after a big bat. I really would. I'd be a little curious on signing CJ Cron just because you look at the home and away splits and they're not, I don't like to be the Coors effect guy, but the away splits aren't that great. So I'd just be a little worried that he'd come to New York and just have a hard time. So I would pass on Cron as of now. I mean, let's see who's out there. MLB Trade Deadline candidates. I mean, CJ Cron is an option. As of right now, in terms of like bats, like we said, besides Soto, I mean, you have Wilson Contreras, but are the Mets going to be willing to trade Contreras for Contreras, considering that you have Alvarez? We'll see. You have a Sean Murphy. You have a Trey Mancini. You have a Josh Belle, who I wouldn't be against signing Josh Belle. I think Josh Belle could really be a big bat to this lineup, a nice lefty bat, table setter, high average, contact line drive type of hitter. He could be a nice, table setter in this lineup. Nelson Cruz, veteran, could provide a little pop in the lineup. He could be another big bat, especially only have him for, this season. I don't know how long his contract is with the Nationals, but kind of that, short-term type of guy. Ramon Laureano for the A's could be pretty nice. Laureano has lost some of his pop, I will say, this season. I mean, the home run balls haven't really been there for him this season. But looking at Ramon Laureano, still 111 OPS plus, 408 slugging. He's been having an okay season. I get it. He plays in Hitters Park, so take his numbers with a grain of salt, but he could be an option to explore. But as of now, I'd say Robertson, probably another 2 bullpen arms, and, maybe a guy like Josh Belle. Lane says, what do you think about the Mets getting Frankie Montas and Soto and Belle for Dom Smith and Seth Lugo. Well, obviously, yeah, you probably give up Dom and Lugo for one of those trade packages. Frankie Montas could be nice from the Oakland A's. Funny, I have my Oakland A's hat on for today. Yeah, Montas could be a nice guy. A's are definitely going to be selling, and obviously Sandy Alderson. You have that relationship, so that could definitely work. I know Sandy's kind of stepped a little bit back and has really let Epler do a lot of the moves, and as he should. The only reason he was as involved last year is because we all know what happened with their past GMs and what they were doing. But yeah, I mean, it doesn't hurt to have him involved with, this type of thing, considering the relationship. You also have AJ Puck, another reliever who I think is pretty underrated. He could be a nice arm. So yeah, I definitely wouldn't be against Frankie Montas. Josh Belle, as you said, Lane, you and I both are on an agreement. Josh Belle could be a good guy for this team. Daniel says, I just recently saw a video of you going to the Tigers game. Did you have a good time? Yeah, I did, man. I'm glad you watched that video. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Yeah, Comerica was a really good experience, really fun time. I don't know if you saw the other videos of Chicago and Cincinnati. We went to Cubs and Reds game. That was really fun. Simply enough, just going to games and not watching the Mets is enjoyable because I don't have to stress about the Mets losing or whatever's going on for the Mets. So it was really nice. Just go to another stadium. I mean, it's on my bucket list to visit all 30, and I'm got 8, 9 down so far. So yeah, 8, 9. So yeah, I mean, it's really nice. I think a lot of people should visit it. Wrigley, I mean, it's just a park everyone should visit, regardless if they like baseball. Alex, what's going on? He says, "Ayo, let's go Tigers." Absolutely. Trace says, "You go to Stetson." I do. You probably see the shirt. Stetson University. Fun fact, that is the same school that Jacob deGrom went to. If you guys know Corey Kluber, he went there. Patrick Mazeika actually went there. And if you guys know Logan Gilbert, he is a rookie pitcher for the Seattle Mariners. He also went there. So they do have some good talent there for baseball. You've probably heard the SNY broadcast mention it once or twice. Lane says, do you bring up Mark Vientos on August 3rd? Day after the deadline, if you don't go after a DH or a comfortable DH that's full-time, yeah, you probably could. Like I said, I've always been a big kind of fan of Vientos. My only concern is the strikeout numbers. The power numbers are amazing, but you got to compare the strikeout numbers and then correlate it to MLB numbers. But yeah, I think Vientos could obviously be a really good call-up. Even a September call-up could be ideal. Daniel says Josh Belle is perfect because he is a switch hitter. He is, but I think for the most part, I don't know what his preferred way to hit is. I don't know if he prefers to hit lefty, prefers to hit righty. But, I mean, having a lineup of 3 switch hitters and the possibility of Josh Belle, and then you have Escobar and Lindor, I mean, that's just insane. And obviously, they probably hit around each other. Usually Lindor hits 3rd or 2nd. Escobar usually hits 5th or 6th. So you slide Belle into that. It's probably going to be hitting around them. So, I mean, I would feel so bad for teams that are trying to make a bullpen move and they're trying to have the lefty face like the 2 righties. And, I mean, it would just never get done. So, yeah, that would be really interesting. So, we are probably going to call it a stream here, to be honest with you guys. I really do appreciate New York Mets and the San Diego Padres series summary or preview. My apologies, the New York Mets and the San Diego Padres series preview. Then we transitioned into the New York Mets and the New York Mets news, I guess you could want to say. So we went over the New York Mets and the San Diego Padres series preview. Then we went over all of you guys' comments, questions, and concerns. How do I feel about the Yankees losing to the Astros? Big W. Yeah, I don't know. Astros are probably the team to beat the Yankees, if anything. But yeah, as I said in today's video, we went over the New York Mets and the San Diego Padres series preview. We went over all New York Mets news, all of that great stuff. So I really do appreciate you guys for tuning in. Please, everyone, smash that like button, turn on those post notifications. Tell your friends about this channel if you know anyone that likes baseball, anything Mets anything Mets related, definitely tell them to stop by. We could talk some baseball, whatever. Follow me on Twitter at Mets Hayden. We could talk baseball there, or if you just want to chat about anything, any other sport, life, school, anything, we could do that. Definitely down to chit chat with some people. Always, I'm a pretty social guy, so I am fond of that. So yeah, definitely do all of those great things as stated before. We got some great stuff going on for the New York Mets ahead. Super exciting going into the second half. It's going to be a really exciting ride. Super, super, super excited to see what this New York Mets team could do in the second half. Otherwise, I really do appreciate you guys for tuning in. Keep spamming the support. Really do appreciate it. Like I said, please, everyone, smash that like button. Turn on those post notifications so you never miss a stream or a video. I did upload a video yesterday going over the New York Mets first half. So if you guys in the chat could check it out, I uploaded it about 24 hours ago. Definitely feel free and check that out. Otherwise, I appreciate you guys for tuning in. Till next time, baseball fans, see ya.